circumstance and up-to-date conditioning, and why you can't stop watching pornography. Today we're going to talk about how it's linked, circumstance and up-to-date conditioning, and it's going to be a good one. So from day one, I want you to know that you are being programmed. And it's not to say that watching pornography isn't your fault. It is and it isn't. So let's go through this and understand circumstance and up-to-date conditioning first. Think of it like you are a calculator. You've got hundreds of thousands of inputs. They're the moment-to-moment experiences that you've got. And each input conjoins, and then you push equals and the next moment comes out. So all of those moments build on top of each other to the moment you're in right now. And if we could see a person's life completely mapped out, then it would be very clear to see why they are addicted to pornography. It'll be clear to see why they have the biases they have, the thought processes they have, the habit loops that they have. All those things will be very easy to see. And also, if you had all that information, the next movement of that person, the next micro movement of that person, you will be able to see. And there are micro movements that you are doing that someone who does not watch pornography would not be doing, which is totally fine. But it's a reality. So what we want to do is we want to understand ourselves at a deep level. And we want to understand exactly why we do what we do and how pornography is linked. And I'm going to help you through that process today by giving you a couple of ways that we can see it, and one way in particular that you can work through it to understand yourself and to progress and to improve your life, not just with pornography, but in all areas of your life. So let's talk about circumstance and up-to-date conditioning first. So circumstance is who your parents are, where you're born, the body and mind that you have from birth. And that's the circumstances. Circumstances are things that you cannot control, essentially. Things that come into your life, like parents, like the school that they send you to, the people that are at that school. They are all the circumstances that are out of your control. And then what is up-to-date conditioning is all the thought processes and all the thoughts that we gather, the belief systems that we gather, the habits that we gather over the years, the biases based on all the circumstances that we experience. So basically everything we experience in life, all those circumstances, we then create a narrative in our mind that forms a web of thoughts, biases, etc., that then play out in our day-to-day life. And it's extreme. That's why it's extremely difficult to shift. We can't just stop watching porn like that, cold turkey, for most of us. It's very unlikely that that will be the case unless you are in unless your thought structure is built a person that does switch like that in lots of different areas of your life. Then perhaps you could do it. But for the majority of us, that's not the case. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And what I want to discuss first is how do we understand our own thought structure? Because this is the thing that is a little bit difficult. We can't just watch a video or have a guru come and explain to us why we're doing what we're doing. We need to do the work. And that's why a lot of people in the world don't do the work, because it's difficult. You can't just, like I say, by listening to a video and adding to the thought structure, that is one thing, but it's difficult to get down to the deep roots of problems and the deep roots of understanding ourselves if we don't push ourselves to understand ourselves in that deep manner. So a couple of the ways to help understand ourselves. The first one is conscious habit reprogramming. So with conscious habit reprogramming, I'll explain first of all how this works in the context of a pornography addict. So for example, if I was coaching someone on how to do this and we were to discuss with them, okay, when is the time that you most often will watch pornography, they might say in the evening when I'm in bed, just before I go to sleep, I, pick up my phone, I'm under the covers, all these details we need to know. And then, okay, what we will do is during the day, we will simulate that environment. We'll close the curtains, close the door, we'll put the blanket over us, we'll get into bed, we'll snuggle up, we'll get that phone out, we'll hit the internet, and then rather than doing anything from that point, we will then stop and we will notice what arises in our thoughts and in our bodily sensations. And once those urges start to get to the point where they're overwhelming, what will happen is we will first of all be able to see what the mind is saying to try and get us to move towards it, whether that's I want to watch my favorite porn star, or I want to watch my favorite fetish of porn. It will take us on a pattern. A habit loop is basically a pattern of thoughts that come up that lead us to that point. So by taking ourselves so far consciously to the point where we understand where we get to, then what usually happens is we then switch off, the mind takes over, and then we're done. But what we're doing by doing this process is actually getting our mind to give itself away, essentially. And when we hear the mind say those things about which direction it wants to take us, what we'll do is we will get up and we'll make a shift. When we know, okay, we're about to lose control here, we get up. And what we do is we get up and we go and have a cold shower, or maybe we go outside, put our feet on the ground, we go for a walk around the house, whatever it is we need to do. And then what we do is we put ourselves back in that situation again. Same situation over and over again for 30 minutes a day, consistently for 30 days. And what you'll notice is after around day 7, 5 to 7, maybe even earlier than that, what you'll start to see is when you put yourself in that position at night, so not in the conscious reprogramming cycle that we're practicing, when at night you'll go to look at your phone and you'll see there's now another thing that arises in your mind that says, maybe we should go outside now and walk around the house, or whatever you're doing, have a cold shower. And you may not follow that path, is not as deeply worn and deeply trodden as the habit loop that takes you towards pornography. That's for sure, right? So in the first 7 days, you may notice that the other option arises, but it's fleeting and it's difficult to actually follow that pathway in that moment. And what will happen is over time, your mind, let's say in 30 days, that other pathway will start to become very strong. 30 days of doing something builds a very strong pathway. Maybe not as strong as years, tens of years will do, but it will build a strong enough pathway that you can see why it's beneficial. It gives you more space in the moment that you may not even have to go and do the thing, but you know, okay, if I was to go and do that right now, that would make me feel better. That's what I would prefer. And so I'm actually going to put the phone down and go to sleep. Or I'm actually going to put the phone down and read a book. So then you start to introduce more and more of these different options for the mind. And that's fantastic. But what we're focusing on is, though, trying to understand itself. So whilst that can work, at the same time, we want to be writing down the things that come up. So if we go to read a book, and then as we're reading a book, again, in the mind, something comes up, we write it down. We shift our perspective, but we write it down. Another way of doing it is to meditate. And meditation is, you don't need to meditate for long periods of time, and you don't need to sit on a cushion and wear a robe. You can just sit in your chair for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, and see what the mind is producing. Where is the mind trying to lead you? So you commit yourself to that 5 or 10 minutes, and then you see, where is the mind trying to lead me? When it says to me, I'm bored, we shouldn't be doing this. Why are we doing this? It's so boring. We could be doing something else. Why don't we watch pornography? And then you can say, okay, well, so the mind, why does the mind want to watch pornography? And then the mind might say, well, this is boring. I want to do something fun. Okay, so now we know that we think that pornography is fun, so we can write that down. And then once we combine these things and we've got more information as to why we're doing what we're doing, then we can also add in journaling. So how I journal is, I hear what the mind says. I come back to it another time when I'm more ready to process information and to have that discussion with my mind. And I work with the mind. I work with the mind to understand why it does what it does. I ask it questions. And I brainstorm with it to create more questions and to understand where I'm getting this from and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And the more it becomes clear to me why I'm doing what I'm doing, the more it doesn't really make sense as to that. For example, if I learn that as a child I was berated, so I feel shame and guilt, and then when I was a child, I wanted to feel safe. So when I was feeling shame and guilt, I tried to feel safe in that space. Then in my future self, now I feel safe in shame and guilt. Even though it's kind of twisted, like that's what the mind does. It searches for things to feel safe and to protect us, and then it's okay with those environments in the future. And if you are feeling shame and guilt when you're watching pornography, it could be something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be from a parent. It could be something that happened to you as a child. It could be friends that influence you to feel this way. Whatever the reason, that's just one example, right? But whatever the reason is, when we understand it, we can see, okay, well, now I have the information. Would I act differently with the information that I now have? And yes, I would. Okay, so that loses its grip, if you like, or at least the grip becomes a little bit less, and then you find out a little bit more, and it becomes less and less and less until eventually it falls away. Can't hold on anymore. And then is where you would then, if you are focused on a journey of self-discovery and becoming the best version of yourself, in those, what will be happening is at the same time that you're dropping these things and loosening the grip on one side, you'll be tightening the grip on something like exercise or whatever it is that your goals that you have. And you're becoming consistent with these things and less consistent with these things. And as you're going, it might take a person, and it might not, but it might take a person 5 years to really release the grip on pornography addiction. But what will happen is, it's not like one day you have pornography addiction and then you battle the mind, not necessarily battle, but you work with the mind, you understand yourself and you do all this stuff, and then in 5 years time, okay, then you get the reward of not watching pornography. It's not like that. Today, for example, if you're watching 5 times a day, after 3 months, maybe the grip loosens and you're watching 3 times a day. After a year, you're watching once a day, and so on and so on. And after that 5-year period, maybe you're not doing it at all. And whilst that grip is completely gone and you're not doing it at all, because you're working on yourself in many areas, what you'll find is maybe you've started going to the gym and you go to the gym once a week or once every a couple of days every week. And again, you grow as a person on that side, and you grip more tightly on this side. So that's my that's my sharing on circumstance and up-to-date conditioning. I believe that this is a really important part of the process to really understanding yourself and to, like I say, breaking down these barriers whilst also building up new barriers in positive ways. So yeah, well, I'll leave it there. We'll talk about this subject a bit more in the future. But thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and to check out my one-on-one coaching in the bio. I wish you luck, my friends, on this journey through your life.